Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again on Common Sense Revisited. We have a very, very bright young man on the show today who is running for U.S. Congress. He deserves your support. His website is towneforcongress.com. That's Towne. There's an E at the end of town. Towneforcongress.com. And I'm reading a little bit from his bio right now. I want you to know a little bit about this young man. He's quite a brilliant young man, and also very experienced for his 30 years. He graduated with honors from Lehigh University, and then he attended Dortmund University in Germany as an exchange student and a Martindale scholarship, where he traveled to Hong Kong and wrote a paper on their political system since the British handover to the Chinese. He's worked as a process engineer. His degree is chemical engineering, process engineer for Abelstick Laboratories in the semiconductor industry. Yeah. Okay. And then 4 years in Shanghai, China. So he spent a lot of years in China, learned how hard life can be without the liberties that we Americans take for granted. And since then, just been educating himself about what's happening to liberty in America. Very, very good on the monetary system. I highly recommend that you go to his website, Towne for Congress. Of all the political websites I have ever seen, I believe that this has more useful information, more educational information, more knowledge on where he stands on issues than any other site I have ever seen. There is no shortage of material on this, and there's some absolutely brilliant things on here that I highly recommend. For example, fractional reserve banking in pictures, and it's parts 1 and 2. One of the strengths of Jake's communication methods is his ability to make things simple, make what most people think is very difficult very simple. And this fractional reserve banking in pictures, part 1 and 2, is really, really good. Very, very good way for you to introduce what's wrong with our monetary system to your friends and relatives and everyone you know. So anyway, I wanted to give that little bit of a plug here for Jake, but you got to support this guy. I mean, Jake, how is the money raising going? How are things going in the campaign so far?
Well, thanks for the kind words. First of all, Clyde, the campaign actually just started taking donations this week. Okay. So we had a burst for the first day, and it's moving along okay. We certainly don't have a lot of funds right now. Less than $2,000, but that's still pretty good for a couple days of taking in donations. So I'm actually pretty happy with the progress, and we're going to be using that money to spread out the message and spread out the constitutions and that type of thing to folks in the area.
And you decided to run as a Republican, is that correct?
No, actually, it's an interesting political scenario here, but to make a long story short, I decided to run as an independent, as a private citizen. I'm actually fairly disgusted with both the Democratic and the Republican parties, which makes a bit of sense. And actually, to enter into one of those major parties would basically mean that the message that I have would quite likely end in May. And actually, I don't want that to happen. What I want to do is talk to as many people and spread the message, which is really the mission statement, is to spread the message. I also want to win, but really spread a message of prosperity through peace and defending freedom, and see where the cards fall. Like the campaign started back in May, so it's still pretty new. The website started up actually about exactly a month ago today, and we're making steady progress. So that said, I'm a political newcomer. I've never run for political office. I've actually been fairly politically apathetic until, like you mentioned, I while over in China started to take a new look at things with, shifted my perspective quite a bit.
I know one of the names you go by is Jake the Defender. Is it Jake the Defender of the Constitution?
The champion of the Constitution. Close enough. I kind of copied off of our mutual friend, Dr. Ron Paul.
Yes, and Jake is a champion of the Constitution. You know more about the Constitution from my experience with you than anyone in the U.S. Congress or the U.S. Senate, except for Dr. Ron Paul. So, you definitely, on that basis, are more qualified than all the rest of them, because that is what they take an oath to do, is defend the Constitution. So that's the message I think that we need to get out on Jake Towne. is that you are a constitutionalist. You understand the Constitution. You understand the most cogent and the most important and most pressing issues of today, which is the monetary system, really, and healthcare and all these others, better than anyone else in terms of the constitutional aspect of things. So you deserve to get elected. Now we just need to get your name out. We need to get people behind you. We need to get money behind you, and do that as quickly as possible. As you know, or maybe you don't know, and I've been down this road before. I've run for office as a Republican and as a Libertarian. When you don't run with one of the major parties, you need a tremendous amount of help and money, because the political parties already give you a certain constituency, a pretty huge constituency if you can get the nomination of one of those parties. So you're starting from the ground up, but you're starting with 100% pure principle behind you. And that's what we need to do. It's going to be whether or not people like our listeners today and people around the country who believe in liberty and freedom will get behind your campaign. And if they do, there's enough of us in this country. But we just saw, I think, Peter Schiff is up to $1 million, isn't he? Or very close to it?
Close to it, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's very close to $1 million in donations in just a few weeks. Of course, he is running as a Republican, and he has a lot of credibility and a lot of name recognition because of his media presentation. He's a talking head on many shows and many of the big media shows all the time. So he gets a very big head start there. But boy, we got to support you. We got people that are on here listening right now. This is a candidate that we have to support. And so, Jake, anything we can do, we want to do. If anybody would like to call in and ask Jake any questions, again, that number is 800-313-9443. But let's talk about fractional reserve banking in pictures and what you did here and what you're attempting to do and what what the impact of this has been on people who have seen it.
Sure. It's a two-part series, and the first part I try to describe what fractional reserve banking is. And right. At first, the first thing for people to realize is why prices keep going up. So the first slide is actually, I believe it's just showing the purchasing power of the dollar. Right. And actually the figure on there, I think I put in 94%, which is being pretty generous. It's actually depends how you calculate it, but we're at like 99% of the dollar has been eroded. And what a lot of people don't realize is we actually still had fractional reserves under the gold standard, but it was anchored by gold. Right. And up until 1933. And even following that, we still had basically precious metal, namely silver, as in our coins. So for instance, up until 1965, you had a silver dime, and for almost the entire history, you could take that silver dime and buy a loaf of bread. Nowadays, if you still have that same silver dime from 1965 and you take it to a jeweler or a coin shop and exchange it for money for the dollars, guess what? You can still buy a loaf of bread with that silver dime. So that's the first thing to realize is, the way that this whole thing works is by expanding the money supply. But the rest of the presentation actually tries to just go through very simply what happens, which is, if you, let's say, Clyde, you take $100 to your bank, you get paid for running this show, and you put it into the bank. What the bank will do is it will keep $10 of it and it'll loan $90 out, say, to me. I take that $90 and I go around and let's say I buy a car with it or whatever. That money then goes back to a bank yet again. They keep $9 and loan out $81. So what has just happened here? It started off with $100, but we're already up to $180 or so. And that process keeps going on until we actually have about $900 created for every $100 into the system, assuming that the level of fractional reserves is 10%. And there's what I have also in the